Go.
Ready? So I'm sitting here with my youth pastor discussing up next a book I've written that really is pointed to young people in ministry, helping us set our expectations right, and then kind of developing some information on just how to do this world right. And so when I'm kind of thinking about all that, I thought first person to kind of converse with about all of this would be my youth pastor. And you served this church for 11 years. So thank you for being here. Thank you for discussing this with me.
Thank you for including me. I mean, it's an honor to be with you. I'm so proud of you writing that book, and I think it's going to really help a lot of people.
I believe so. I think you really helped me. And one thing that we catch at our church is that what we've experienced, me having one youth pastor my entire life, you served here for 11 years. That's not the norm these days. And so I thank you for everything you've done. And I just kind of want to open up what I've been blessed with to the world. And that's kind of what this conversation's about. And
let's do it.
And so let's get right into it. So in the introduction, I make reference to a moment that I had with ramen noodles, not the Walmart kind, but I went to some actual restaurant in LA, and my cousins were there. They wanted to take me to this place. I had never had it before, and because it was foreign, when they brought the food to me, I sent it back. I was like, that's not what I ordered, but it actually was, and it ended up being a great dining experience. And that just to me so summed up what ministry is for young people, because if you go in with wrong expectations, you may quit or have a harder go at it because your expectations aren't right. And so the way that I kind of, or the way that we kind of discuss it in chapter 1 is making sure you know what you've said yes to.
Right.
So let me ask you a question, Mondo. From your experience, a young person in ministry, when they say yes to ministry, what are they actually saying yes to?
Well, the first thing, in retrospect, and I'm still in ministry. I'm still around. I still love serving. But you're saying yes to probably the greatest, let's be real, the greatest blessing you're ever going to have in your life. And that is attached to a lot of responsibility. So you're saying yes to serving others, which isn't always easy. You're saying yes to making sure you are disciplining yourself. You're saying yes to making sure that you're taking care of God's people. I mean, that's like a big thing. So at the end of the day, you're really just saying yes to belonging to somebody else. You belong to God. You're not always going to be making the decisions you wish you can make. You're not always going to be getting what you want. So that continues. I know sometimes when you're a child, we're kids, and we want, I want a toy. You're in a store and I want something, and your mom or dad says, no, you can't have that. Well, sometimes that's what ministry's like. And then there are those moments where you're going to get what you want too. So I would say that that's what you're saying yes to, is a life of surrender.
100%. And I like that, because you really helped me when I first came on staff. I was 19. You really helped me because I think anyone would agree with that. Anyone watching this would say, yeah, that's what I've said yes to. But maybe in theory it's easy to say yes to that. But in reality it's difficult, because we're talking about sometimes believing God has called me to something and finding out I'm not necessarily right, or the timing's not right. Believing I'm ready for a certain level of leadership, and my pastor or my youth pastor or my leader just doesn't get it, and maybe I'm not called here because of that. They go into it thinking they're saying yes to a career advancement.
Right.
In reality, you're saying yes to getting kicked under the table and told your opinion doesn't matter yet. You're being told, yes, you've been anointed, but go back to the sheep pen.
Sure.
And you really helped me with that. So what more specifically, young person, maybe they're a pastor, they're going to a church to serve as a youth pastor, or they're a member of the team. What are some things that they have to keep saying yes to that are hard? Like, how would you break that down in reality?
I don't remember one story in the Bible where the person who was called felt or was qualified. I mean, in reality, they weren't qualified, and they didn't ever really feel qualified. I don't remember any story in the Bible where God said, it's going to be you, Gideon, and he's like, yeah. Nobody does that. So you're saying yes to constantly feeling, sorry, this is going to be like, I don't want ministry, but you're going to be yes to constantly feeling not good enough.
Inadequate.
And if you can get past that feeling, because that's where actually you should be. If you're in ministry and you feel like, I got this, it's all under control, you might have another step you haven't taken. You might be up next for something and you haven't even realized it. And here you are, comfortable and feeling good. Man, the times in ministry where God has really put me to something, I've never really felt that secure. I might act confident or I might even feel confident, but inside I'm definitely feeling, wow, I'm not qualified for this.
So it's almost like if you go into ministry with the opposite expectation, that you feel you're qualified,
Right.
that you feel like you deserve anything, you're actually backwards here.
Yeah, which is scary in today's society because there's this feeling of like, I deserve it. I deserve to have 200 youth in my ministry. I deserve to have the most incredible guest experience team or greeters or ushers or whatever, wherever
I deserve to be involved on Sundays and,
I deserve to
use
get
my
paid.
gift.
I deserve money.
I deserve to lead a song. I
Right.
deserve to be paid. But you know what? Speaking as a millennial, I wonder if it doesn't come from the place of I deserve it. What if it comes from the place of I need it to keep up with everyone else I'm seeing on social media? So please give it to me so I can keep up with people.
You know, social media is the highlight reel. We all know this, but it's important for us to remind ourselves. Just last night, we're looking at some pictures at the house, just some pictures that come up on the Apple TV thing. And it's the highlight reel of our life. I mean, every picture in there is fun and awesome and smiling and laughter. And nobody sees what it took to have a 24-year marriage or 25-year marriage that's successful. Nobody sees the discipline that the kids needed. And that's a lot like ministry. So you're going to see that youth pastor with the Bible, with that perfect pose, or maybe not even the Bible. It's probably an iPad or a phone, like that perfect pose saying the perfect thing. And that's just the highlight reel. That took weeks or months or years to develop, even the way they look and the way they speak and the way they act. So I would say that comparison game can be a killer.
100%. And I don't think we even recognize it, but I will say that one thing that you helped me realize was getting kicked under the table because I started to share an opinion that honestly wasn't ready to be heard because of the season of life I was in. You helped me recognize that kick under the table, it's just part of the deal. Mm-hmm. You helped me recognize that being passed over by the dad, you know, because people forget that David was not only passed over by Jesse when the prophet came,
right.
but when it came time for war, when it was exciting to go to war, he was the only one who couldn't go. You're the one who helped me think sometimes being passed over is still part of the game. And one thing, and we'll get into this, but one thing that will mess people up is trying to jump ship because they think God's calling them elsewhere when they forget some of the foundational parts of who you are as a man or woman of God and a leader of God's church happens when you keep saying yes to being told no.
Yep.
When you over time, and not 3 months, not 6 months, not even a year, you're talking 5, 10 years where you come in last guy at the table. One of the crazy things about being a young person in ministry today, and I can only speak for today, is that when Jesus is the one that comes and says, when you walk into a room, take the lowest seat, young people in ministry today come into the seat of social media and need to post only what they think will give them the highest seat.
Right.
They need to post that 1 minute clip of them. But they forget that saying yes to ministry is saying yes to a parent who's mad because of the song you're playing in the loudspeakers. A parent that's mad because you said one thing in a newsletter that you didn't mean. A parent who's asking you how you're going to handle Halloween. You know, you have to recognize you're saying yes to that. And one of the things that is in the book in a later section is people are awesome until they aren't. And that's one of the things that's important is you're saying yes to people.
Oh, yeah.
And we love this term right now. Ministry's loving people.
Yeah,
but that's the hardest thing to do. Corporate America, they love the bottom line. We have to love people. But I think it's really important to set your expectations. And I think it's important to have someone that helps you set expectations because that's what you were for me as you were my youth pastor. You're a pastor on staff that when I took over the youth ministry and was able to operate in the leadership of that, you were there to really help me with that. So I thank you for that. And one of the things that you helped me do as we transition into chapter 2 was you helped me know that I was enough for God and then helped me figure out when it was enough for me because you're dealing with so much.
Yeah.
What would you say for a young person in ministry watching this video? What would you say should be enough for them? Because we're enough for God.
Yeah.
When should what we're seeing be enough for us?
So this is a looking back answer for me because if you're not careful with that word enough, it can take you out.
Yeah.
If you're not careful with that word enough, it can really mess you up. So I think in your book you talk about wins too. I think enough and winning should be kind of two different things. Enough is that you've been called. Enough is that you get to serve. Enough is that you're learning things by getting kicked under the table that most people will never learn in their life, and they're going to be brats for the rest of their life. So I think enough is the fact that you're going through the ministry experience. That's enough. That is, man, you're in the fold. God is actually now, you are the clay and he's molding you. And the fact that he's chosen you and allowed you to be molded and even sometimes torn down, that's enough. Now then there's wins, and that's a whole different story, and where you define those are important too. I'll give you another enough in retrospect. One person changed, and I know that's another cliche, but let me tell you the fact of the matter is one person's life that they didn't go and end their life. They didn't go and run away from home. They didn't go and do something crazy because of your influence in some small way. That's enough. You changed an entire family tree. You helped God influence a person that was kind of on the edge of something else. That's enough. That's enough.
I immediately jumped to thinking, and you've helped me with this, trying to view my success. As I'm raising up a youth pastor who's been doing it for about 2 years now, I try to help him with this. View your success in light of what these kids' lives would be if you weren't there.
Oh gosh.
If this youth ministry didn't exist, if this young adult ministry didn't exist, what would your ministry look like if you weren't there leading your parking team? If you weren't there cleaning the bathrooms?
crazy.
So many young people don't recognize the cleaning team is what keeps us in ministry, because no pastor is going to let you run nuts with the facilities and keep doing what you do.
Of course.
So that's got to be enough. And something you just said that has really hit me personally that I probably don't share enough. We get to continue what Christ gave his life for, what Paul preached all over the place, what Peter was martyred and all the other martyrs were martyred for. We get to continue that.
Yep.
This isn't a whole new thing. We're continuing, and that should be enough. And that was a beautiful answer. And your conversation and your comments about making sure you define and separate satisfaction and enough from wins. I think that's important.
And you know, it's easy to get caught up in the now. And I know you were about to say something else, but it's easy to get caught up in the now. These enough answers that I'm giving, you see them after. You literally watch someone that you were able to, you remember that conversation at 1 a.m. when you said, no, I'm not hanging out any later. All the youth have to go home, and it was one of your leaders. And somehow you were like, yeah, fine, I'll go to IHOP or I'll go to wherever with you. And you didn't really want to, you're tired, but you spent an hour or two with that person that needed to talk. And they're ready to leave, they're ready to quit, they're ready to stop. And 10 years later, you see that person leading in ministry. You see that person doing something fantastic they're married and they have a child. And you remember the conversation when they were done. And then that's where you see the enough. So stick around long enough to see those rewards, because you don't see them in the now. You don't.
And that's such a perfect segue into jumping from, chapter 1 and 2 all the way to 10. Ministry is kind of like boxing. There's not many knockouts. There's a lot of decision fights where both people go away thinking, did I win? Did they win? How did that go? Some of those conversations, did I do good enough in that conversation or not? Did I preach good enough or not? Did I sing good enough or not? And it's really hard to know. And sometimes if you go in thinking everything you did was a knockout, those are normally the sermons or the songs where people don't say anything. But what would you say are some knockout wins that we don't recognize? Are some wins that we have to hold on to and say, you know what, that is a win?
The win is a life lesson learned. The win is being able to get close to or next to that leader that you want to be like. They have a wife, they have a child, and you're maybe in your single years and you're a young person. You get to rub shoulders with that leader and emulate their life. I can tell you, gosh, we don't have time in this video for me to tell you the disasters that we avoided by being next to the right people. So that's a win. A win in youth ministry is kids showing up and then showing up again, and then showing up again. A parent coming to you after maybe a month or two and saying, "Man, my child was not even talking. They were locked up in their room, and now they're social again. Thank you. They have 2 or 3 friends here at church."
Came back from camp and they're doing the dishes now.
That won't last. They're making their bed. Yeah.
Sorry.
Give it a month.
We can't fix that.
But those are wins. Your personality changing. You being on a team. You being part of something bigger than even you. Some of those small wins are the little things that are happening in your life that are going to bless you in the long term.
You know, Mondo, one of the things about wins, and one of the things I'll never forget about you, is you love pilots. You've always loved planes and that kind of thing, and
Helicopters.
you like all of it. But when it comes to pilots, or captains of ships, whatever, you don't need one that's going to do backflips. You don't need one that's going to do crazy stuff, dive deep all the way to 4,000 feet and then come back up. You just want a guy that will get you in the air and back on the ground safely. And leaders kind of forget that.
Yep.
That sometimes because there's turbulence on the flight, or the food cart service isn't going the way it wanted to, or you're not as good of a pilot as others,
Right.
you jump ship, but you forget that there's 65 people on this flight that have paid to be there, that have bought in, that want to go where you're taking
trusting
them.
you.
And a good leader just gets them on the ground. So I think a small win is being steadfast.
Absolutely.
Just being stable. That's a small win. Because I don't have to be the world's greatest leader, the world's greatest preacher. I don't have to have the world's biggest following. I just got to get the people that have paid for a ticket on the ground.
Yep.
And that doesn't happen in a year. It doesn't happen in even 3 years. Sometimes that's just sticking around. And so we talked about short-term wins, but tell me long-term wins. Because I don't think young people, I'm 27, I can't even see past like next Friday. What are some long-term wins for young people in ministry?
Sticking around, being stable, in wherever you're serving. God has you in a place for a purpose, and you'll go back to that place for that same purpose if you don't stick around long enough to be able to graduate to your next place. It's like, stay where you're at. Stay where you're at. Be there long enough to see some of your small wins become a little bit bigger. And I want to say that the big win is stability, is stickability. There are many times in ministry where everyone, not some, everyone's going to want to stop, quit, change, go, leave, be done. Because
More times than not.
and you want to know something? Jesus wanted to do that.
Yep.
So we're not in bad company. Jesus himself, right before the cross, was like, take this cup from me. I don't even know if I could do this. Jesus. So if he had that feeling, we're going to have that feeling a whole bunch more. So being able to get over yourself, being able to get over your whining maybe, or even your legitimate concerns, getting through that, never getting offended. Gosh, we didn't even go into that. Be like offense free. And that's going to help you stick around. You're never going to say anything, do anything that's going to offend me. I'm okay with me. I'm okay with what God has called me to be. I'm going to stick around here. And then
Because there are long-term wins
Yes.
that I only get
only
when I stick around. And
Only.
You know what's crazy? You were my youth pastor my entire life. I had you forever. We had service
What an
on Wednesdays.
awesome
What an awesome thing. Actually, one day I'll tell the world some of those sermons.
We didn't talk
because-
about humility today.
No, we didn't.
Did we?
But Mondo, you preached a lot of Sundays because we had like middle school class, and every Wednesday. And I remember 3 or 4 sermons because they were crazy memorable.
It's crazy.
But you know what I do remember? Your presence. I am a pastor's kid, raised by some of the most incredible parents on the planet, with grandparents on both sides who have been in ministry their entire lives, with aunts and uncles that have been doing ministry all over the planet, and I still needed you. Now go to that single mom kid who is coming to church. He needs a consistent presence.
Yes.
A long-term win is sticking around long enough for you to see that kid graduate. And you know what? And maybe go away to college, but be able to keep his head on straight because of your presence in his life.
Absolutely.
So I thank you for what you've done. And honestly, this is why I wanted to start with you, because what you provided me, and then what I was able to provide because of your example, because of my dad's example of sticking around and not getting offended as man.
Right.
I was his son, man. I was getting kicked under that table a lot. Sticking around long enough. Now I'm able to see little kids that were 12 years old in our ministry. Now they're 19 and they're running the worship service. It's unbelievable to see my 18-year-old sister, Gabby, who leads worship at our other campus all the time and runs the youth team now for worship. She wasn't even in youth group when I was a youth pastor.
Wow.
For a long portion of it. To now see her go through it and graduate, there are long-term wins you do not get if you don't stick around long enough. And there's no shame in this.
Absolutely.
We make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
But I would just say, whoever's watching this, be a Mondo for a Chris somewhere. Wherever you're at, be a Mondo for a Chris. And just be consistent. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for being a part of this. And you were a blessing to me, man.
And I appreciate your words. And this right here is a long-term win for me. So I can speak to this from this side of it. It's an honor. So thank you for hanging with me today and inviting me here. And this was awesome. Your book is amazing. Thanks for giving me a pre-copy. I got one before everybody else did.
Before we go anywhere, let this be a sign to anyone watching. If you're a pastor out there and you have to pastor another pastor's kids that you're not related to, I had the greatest parents and pastors in the world, and I still needed you.
Wow.
So let that speak for itself. Thank you for this, man.
Thank you, bud.